Hi, I'm Cheryl Beckley, a producer director at WKU PBS.
And I'm Josh Novick, also a producer-director at WKYU PBS.
And it's this time of year where we come to you to ask you to become a member of our television station. We have a great program coming up, The Nature of History, where nature and history come together to tell some really wonderful stories about the state of Kentucky.
Yeah, a lot of these stories you've probably heard of, either in school or taking little trips around the state. But what's nice about this is we kind of place them in a context that gives you a broader view of the history of the state and some of the amazing sights and stories that you can find in this great country.
Absolutely. And the other thing that we really get to explore is the nature that is part of the stories. We don't often talk about how beautiful our state is and why we have these beautiful parks all over the place. We get into the nature, we get into the history, and we get into a program like none you've ever seen before.
It's really amazing just the opportunity to work on a project like this, and it's not really possible unless we have involvement from you. While it's great to go out and do some of these stories, what's even better is to know that we're doing these stories because it's what you want to see. And that's only possible when there's a relationship. And this is an opportunity for us to come out and ask you to reach out to us, financially support programs like these, but also tell us what you're looking for. What do you want to see on this station?
So now we're going to bring you the premiere of The Nature of History. You can call 1-800-599-2424 to become a member. And now you can watch The Nature of History.
Nature and history are intricately linked in the stories of some of Kentucky's greatest leaders and important battles. The essence of each is held in the land and the efforts to preserve and conserve these important places in the Commonwealth. The Nature of History is a profound and fascinating mix of the natural and historic heritage of Kentucky.
Fire!
Fire is a bringer of destruction, change, and for nature, rebirth. In places like Perryville Battlefield State Historic Site, you'll find a deep connection between nature and history that brings both elements to life for visitors.
Really, we're lucky because Perryville is one of the best preserved battlefields in the country. And when you come here and visit, what you see is essentially what the soldiers saw here in 1862. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that in 2015, this area became a wonderful nature habitat to preserve native wildflowers and native grasses too. So when you come here, you're literally walking in the footsteps of history, because what you see is what the soldiers would have experienced.
The battlefield at Perryville hosts thousands of visitors every year, both human and animal.
I'm not sure why monarchs congregate at Perryville in such high numbers. It's well known to be one of the best, if not the best, monarch stopover sites in Kentucky.
This is one of the largest continuous grassland habitats left here in Kentucky, so it provides a lot of pollinator food and habitat. So the monarchs like to stop and rest here and nectar and re-energize on their way to Mexico. So the monarch is getting a lot of publicity now, and everyone knows it. It's the only insect that we have that makes that great journey. So it's super unique, and we want to protect it and preserve it for as long as we can, but the numbers are declining. And the biggest reason is habitat degradation.
The sticker is going to go in this cell right here.
One of the ways to preserve large natural areas is through prescribed burns that take out invasive species and lets native species flourish, all the while bringing the habitat back to what soldiers would have seen in the fall of 1862.
People see this and they always think, oh, you've done something bad here, you've injured it, but there's nothing quite like a rejuvenating grassland after a fire has come through. It's amazing how quickly it responds to it. It's amazing how much healthier it makes the grassland, how it helps get rid of some of the bad stuff. So, it's a lot prettier for people to walk, and it's a lot more representative of what it was at the time of the Civil War. But not just that, Perryville has now gone from just being a historic site to now it provides valuable habitat for lots of songbirds, lots of pollinators, the monarch butterfly. And so it's just been really amazing to be a part of taking this site that had such a history to it and really helping it to also have a great natural history and story to tell along with that historical aspect.
Perryville not only serves as a habitat for native species, but stands as a reminder of a very dark time in Kentucky's history.
So in the summer of 1862, Confederate armies invaded Kentucky, essentially to hold it for the Confederacy. And after really stumbling around the Commonwealth for a number of weeks, a Union army that was based out of Louisville marched down toward Perryville to shove them out of the state. And so the two armies essentially accidentally met here in October of 1862, and it was a terrible day. The land was dry from a severe drought. There wasn't water for the troops, for example.
One of the first engagements of the Battle of Perryville happened because two scouting parties came upon one another at a creek near Perryville.
And after the troops met here, they fought a terrible 4 or 5 hour battle that ended up killing around 7,500 men. And again, it became a critical turning point in the war. Since they didn't attain a really strategic victory here, they were eventually shoved out of Kentucky, and that left the state in Union hands for the remainder of the conflict.
The history of Perryville is an important element for its conservation, but out of that, so much more has come to this area of Kentucky.
There are a whole lot of different reasons why we need to preserve areas like this. One of them is, of course, the history of itself. As some prominent philosopher once said, you know, those without a past are doomed to relive it in the future. We've got to preserve our past and let others know so we won't get in the situation we did back in the election of Abraham Lincoln against all these different parties, all these different factions. Another reason why is if you're not really into the history itself, this is another good way where you can come out and enjoy the beauty of nature.
Perryville, again, the site of Kentucky's largest battle. You can come here now, you can see monarch butterflies, you can see deer, you can see a vast array of wildflowers in Kentucky. And so it's a whole range of emotions that you experience while you're here. So it's a beautiful, peaceful setting. But one, over 150 years ago, because of the battle that took place here, it's a site of national significance. So we're fortunate that it's one of the best preserved battlefields in the country, not only for that historic experience that you can get while you're here at Perryville, but also for that, going back to nature and really getting an understanding of nature and getting an idea of what Kentucky habitat should be like.
Tebbs Bend, located on the Green River in Taylor County, was the site of another bloody Civil War battle. But first, it was lush farmland that holds one of the most biodiverse river systems in Kentucky.
But it's this stretch of the river from about this point to as much as 125 miles downstream that literally is the most biodiverse stretch of river in the entire state of Kentucky. And so that all begins right here. Whether it be the significance of mussel beds on the Green River, certainly increase as we get away from the dam, but some of those mussels are still hanging on, still found here. We have great fish diversity, and a small portion of the 150 species of fishes, which equates to more than all the rivers of Europe, can also be found right here off of the Tebbs Bend Nature Preserve. I like to tell people that when you float down the Green River, and people do that now, it's just such a wonderful sight for recreation. When you float over our river, it's really like you're floating over a living museum. Now, I think of the river in terms of its species diversity as being this great library, and every species in that river represents a volume. And many of those volumes have never been cracked open. Some of them we know very little about. There's still so much mystery waiting to be uncovered on the Green River, whether that's by a youngster who's visiting the river for the first time with his parents, or maybe in a second or third grade class, or maybe it's someone like myself who was born and raised in this area and has come back to complete their life here.
This site is a nexus of nature and history, in that the narrow neck of the Green River at Tebbs Bend brought together the forces of Confederate General John Hunt Morgan and Colonel Orlando Hurley Moore of the 25th Michigan Infantry on July 4th, 1863.
And so he realized that at Tebbs Bend, at Green River, that there was a small force of the 25th Michigan, half a regiment, that had been sent out here by Colonel Jeremiah Boyle. And so he felt that he could get them to surrender quickly, and he would be on his way to Lebanon. Little did he know that Colonel Moore had chosen his place of conflict very carefully.
Morgan had close to 2,500 elite troops against Moore's smaller contingent of about 200 men. The initial engagement began with Morgan dividing his forces and flanking the Union troops. When this effort failed, Morgan called for Moore to surrender. Moore refused, and firing resumed.
Fire! We've accounted for at least 7 Confederate attacks over and over and over again, all of which failed. Lieutenant Hogan's detachment, about 40 men, literally just 40 men, pushed back an entire Confederate battalion, definitely twice their number, for 30 minutes, and they were on these commanding bluffs. 40 men held out against an entire Confederate cavalry battalion for 30 minutes.
The loss at Tebbs Bend cost General Morgan 35 soldiers, many of whom were experienced officers. He was able to pick up his 40 wounded and head south toward Campbellsville. Colonel Moore lost 6 soldiers with 23 wounded in the battle. The stories of heroism and sacrifice still resound in this peaceful spot on the Green River.
Researching the Civil War over and over and over again, for years and years and years, you start to learn those significant stories. Give you a good one for Tebbs Bend. There's a fella here in the 25th Michigan who, this is his first battle. His name is George Hicks, about 21 or so years old. He left behind an 18-month-old baby and a wife back at home. He didn't have to join up whatsoever, but he did. He felt that he was called to do his service for the Union. Comes here, this is his first battle. He's going to be brutally and mortally wounded out here. Going to die several days later, but he gave his life out here at Tebbs Bend. And it's important to preserve this land because of where George Hicks died, so that way that family, the Hicks family, can come back out here and see where he gave his lifeblood for, where he sacrificed and what he believed in, what he thought was true and whole. They can come out here, feel it, grasp it, and understand why he did it. It's really important just to preserve this place.
The Tebbs Bend Battlefield and Nature Area is an important effort to preserve and conserve land that holds the memories of lives sacrificed and of history made, but also preserves a natural legacy that allows those who come for the history to enjoy the beauty of the river and the surrounding countryside. History and nature meet in a small way at Blue Licks Battlefield State Park, located just outside of Carlisle, Kentucky. The challenges of preservation and conservation sometimes starts with a small step. This park holds the history of what some say was one of the last battles of the Revolutionary War and the federally endangered species called Short's goldenrod. Efforts to save each of these distinct cultural and natural resources starts with knowledge.
Short's goldenrod occurs here, and it's one of our most endemic species in Kentucky. The park here contains the largest population that's left of the species. The species used to be more widespread. It occurred from Louisville to Maysville. The bison that were here would wallow and get seeds attached to them, and as they made their way across the bluegrass, they would drop those seeds and you had other populations, but that no longer happens anymore, and so this species is a relic, really, of a world that used to be.
It's not just the lack of bison in the area that endangers plants like Short's goldenrod, but the encroachment of civilization.
These areas are relics of our history. They aren't being created anymore. They only occur in certain places, and once they're gone, they're gone. And so it's really important to, take the time, spend the money that's necessary to keep these places alive.
This area was home not only to animals, but to settlers flowing into Kentucky looking for new land to inhabit. In 1782, several small settlements had been established, and the remnants of the British Loyalists, known as Butler's Rangers, and warriors from a few Native American tribes had a plan to draw out the militias protecting the frontier fortifications.
The Battle of Blue Licks for August of that year basically played out perfectly to those Loyalists. You have a small station just outside of Lexington called Bryan Station. I say a small station. You probably had about 60 families living on the inside of this fortification. All the leaders of the fortification get together and say, all right, we have a little bit of an issue here. We could be surrounded by as many as 300 Native Americans and British Loyalists.
The settlers called for help from the neighboring area, but when the men arrived, the forces surrounding the settlement had disappeared. A council of militia officers met to discuss what should be done.
You have notable people like Daniel Boone and John Todd and Stephen Trigg. And as they're having this, apparently there's a lower-ranking officer by the name of Hugh McGarry. Hugh McGarry kind of speaks up and he says, I think there's more of them than there are of us. I think we're walking right into a trap. I think we probably need to wait on some reinforcements. It's at that time that he's basically called a coward out in front of everybody there. This probably comes into play a little bit later on.
It was decided that they would take most of the militiamen and chase the departing British and Native Americans who had left at what history says was a leisurely pace, and they'd made it obvious what direction they'd taken. The pursuers made it to the banks of what is now called Blue Licks, and they had another council. Hugh McGarry, trying to save face, urged them onward when other, cooler heads would have waited for reinforcements.
McGarry says, why'd we come here? We came here to fight, and he is accredited as having said, by godly man, why'd we come here? So he turns around to everybody and basically calls everybody out there on the spot, 182 militia, and he says, all of you all who ain't cowards, follow me. They form into 3 different columns, and that's when they begin their march up through this area of the Buffalo Trace, up very close to this area on the park property now. We don't know exactly who fires the first shot, but we know one of the first regiments to actually inflict the most damage would have been Trigg on the right side. Trigg receives a full volley from a concealed area, killing nearly half of his forces. Then you have John Todd, who tries to return fire from the center column, leaving himself open to probably a Butler's Rangers unit in the front. So now everybody's trying to reload. Stephen Trigg is already dead. John Todd is already dead. Most of your guys, probably 20 to 30 of them, are already gone.
The outcome for the militiamen was disaster. 80 of the 182 men were dead, dying, or wounded. Daniel Boone watched his son Israel die in his arms, and the Battle of Blue Licks was over minutes after it started. The legacy of this battle was felt throughout the region for years, and the reminder of the cost is held in this park and nature preserve.
The world that we live in, the state of Kentucky, the Commonwealth of Kentucky, is vastly different than it was historically. And, we have these little vestiges of how Kentucky used to be that are important for folks to know about so that they know where we all came from.
I am a big fan of Kentucky, and mostly what makes Kentucky Kentucky is its history as well as its environment. I mean, you want to go to a place like Blue Licks because you can walk in the footsteps of Daniel Boone, literally. You can walk where thousands and thousands of bison who have been gone from Kentucky for a couple hundred years, where they also walk. You can see a plant that doesn't really occur anywhere else in the world except for right here. This is unique. It's unique from a human history standpoint and from an environmental standpoint.
Along the Buffalo Trace from Blue Licks, you'll find the route leading to Lower Howards Creek. This area holds some rare plant species and the once endangered running buffalo clover.
We think bison played a major role in the life cycle of running buffalo clover, and with the elimination of bison on the landscape, we lost a lot of that habitat as well as a seed dispersal mechanism. It's important because it was once a common plant across the landscape. For the whole state, we only have 34 extant populations of the plant, and we have over 30 populations that are considered extirpated from the state. So that's only about a 50% rate that we actually have of plants remaining. Because it's part of our heritage. It's what was here before we came in and changed the landscape, but it's good to know about where we came from and what was here before we were here, and I think that's worth preserving as well as conserving the plants that are here.
Plant species like the running buffalo clover is only one of the reasons that Lower Howards Creek is thought worthy of preservation. The bounty of beauty along the creek and the history the area holds is evident to anyone who visits. Early settlers to the area found a rich source of water and established a thriving community and industry. The ruins of a large flour mill are reminders of those who built it and the stories they leave behind.
These people were not just making production of goods for local use, but for international use. And so when those settlers, they couldn't do it by themselves. And so the African Americans have been very under-recognized for what they did to build Kentucky's moneyed economy. And they were, the slave economy is a horrible thing that we're now having to address. But this whole valley, I would be willing to bet that almost every stone fence in this valley, every building in this valley, and most of the labor for building the mill races and the dams and all the structures that house this industry were built by enslaved African Americans. And we have done a lot of research about the people who lived here, and so we know how important their work was.
During the Civil War, the enslaved men from the area enlisted at Camp Nelson in Jessamine County and fought for the Union in several major battles. When returning home from their enlistments, they were given $200, which some used to buy land along Lower Howards Creek.
And when they came out of the Army, this place, they had had homes here. They had had jobs here as enslaved African Americans. They still had family here. They didn't want to leave. So they came back here and they lived in small communities, African American hamlets. So they started buying land. And just downstream from here, about a quarter mile from the mill, there was a fellow named Green Martin who enlisted as Green Stevens because he belonged to John Stevens. But he bought an 8-acre tract of land and worked a little farm here and then retired and moved to Winchester. And he's buried not far from here in a really beautiful little cemetery that was on his wife's family, a farm, and it's been being taken care of. And he has 2 markers. He has his Army marker that lists him as Green Stevens, which is how he enlisted, and then it has his other marker which says Green Martin.
In changing his name, Green Martin made his freedom a tangible sign to the world that he was his own man. Research is continuing into others who were enslaved here at Lower Howards Creek in Clark County. Their stories will be added to the heritage of Kentucky. Lower Howards Creek Nature and Heritage Preserve is only a small part of the efforts of Kentuckians to save vestiges of natural lands and parts of our history that are quickly disappearing. Abraham Lincoln is a celebrated native Kentuckian with 2 places preserved to anchor his legacy in Kentucky: the Abraham Lincoln birthplace and Abraham Lincoln's boyhood home at Knob Creek in LaRue County. Each has a story to tell about our 14th president's early life, but his boyhood home is where the story is told of how the life of Lincoln was saved by a childhood friend. Austin Gallagher, an early friend of Abraham Lincoln's, was heard to tell this story. He says that when he and Lincoln were children, Lincoln fell into Knob Creek when it was flooded. Lincoln, unable to swim, started to drown, but then grabbed onto a limb that Gallagher held out to him, dragging him to shore, where he shook Lincoln until he was all right. There's no corroboration of this story in any of Lincoln's writings or biographies, but the tale lives on, and we have one more reminder of why this beautiful place is important. This and other stories are legacies that define who we are as Kentuckians. By combining the efforts to both conserve and preserve nature and history, the Commonwealth is doubling its ability to save what's left of both. The determination of those who work on these projects is one that is monumentally important to the people of Kentucky.
I do what I do because there's a bigger purpose in life than just me. Yeah, there's more to this life than what I make of it while I'm here. Most people who are involved in the process of conservation, or who are involved in land protection, nature or cultural protection, they're not in it for what they're able to achieve or accomplish, right now. We're in it because we know that this is a race that will never be won. We have to continue running the race, and to have a result that will benefit future generations is why I do what I do. I want to know that I have this feeling that once I leave this earth, that I have indeed done something to leave it better than I found it. This is a principle that was instilled in me by my father. And it's one of the things that I'll never forget that he shared with me as I grew up, taking me back to places that I visited as a child and reminding me how important it was to leave a place better than you found it, so that others can enjoy and reap the benefits of that place, of that resource, once you're gone as well.
Kentucky is a place where the combined elements of nature and history come together to make the story of the Commonwealth truly remarkable.
Funding for the Nature of History was provided by the Kentucky Heritage Land Conservation Fund and viewers like you. Thank you.
Well, you've just seen the nature of history, and we hope that you enjoy this particular program. It has been a joy for us to be able to work on it. We learned about history, we learned about nature, and the aerial video that you saw, actually Josh shot with our new drone, and it was something that he had to learn how to do this particular program. When you support programs like this, we're able to do beautiful documentaries like this, but you also support other programs like Lost River Sessions and the documentaries that we do.
Yes, I mean, we're always trying to push ourselves to not only produce really good content, but produce it in ways that we feel like you would really, really enjoy. And that's really only possible when we, again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but we hear from you. If there's a story out there that you know of that you're like, you know what, someone needs to do a piece on this, call us, email us, let us know. And Cheryl and I would love to go out and actually do it.
Absolutely. We want to thank those of you who have called, and for those who are going to call, remember, become a member, 1-800-599-2424. Thank you.